Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. We just finished the Our Father Abraham series, primarily focusing on the 10 trials of Abraham. We will, of course, speak of Abraham in the future because he is Abraham after all, but that was that. Now we're going to be moving on. This one is called Six Who Were Called by Name. This is chapter 32, and it's going to be 32a. Few different topics in this chapter. I don't want to confuse you. So, let's go. Hallelu et Adonai kol goim, shabechu kol haomim, ki gavar alenu chasdo, ve'emet Adonai leolam, hallelujah. Six were called by their names before they were born, and they are Isaac, Ishmael, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses our rabbi, Solomon, Josiah, also known as Yoshiyahu, and the name of King Messiah. May God bring him swiftly in our day. The commentators have a lot to say about this list, obviously, right? You're hearing all these people like, wait a minute, something's not exactly sitting right, right? One of the names is questionable, that one being Ishmael. What is he doing on the list with these incredible individuals? Why is Ishmael there? Okay, we'll see. One is in the form of a remez, a hint. That would be Moses. Again, we're going to tackle all these topics. And one who has yet to come. In other words, before he was born, but he has not been born yet. Therefore, what's going on here? And that would be obviously King Messiah. Of course, like I said, we'll be discussing them all. So, how do we know about Isaac? Because it is said in Genesis 17:19, Vayomer Elohim aval Sarai shtecha yoledet lecha ben, vekarata et shmo Yitzchak, vehakimoti et briti ito librit olam lezar'o acharav. And God said, indeed, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you shall name him Isaac. He's already been called by God, right? And I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his seed after him. And why was his name Isaac? Yitzchak. Let's break this name down, okay? As this is the name that God actually gave him. So, Yitzchak, 4 letters, Yud, Tzadik, Chet, and Kuf. Without getting into the actual meaning of the letters, we're going to go down with a simple gematria, okay? The numerical value. Yud has the numerical value of 10. 10 trials were given to Abraham. And Yitzchak is, of course, being the 10th and the deciding factor as all the trials were culminated. In that last one, it was all about him as well. Avraham and Yitzchak together, sort of passing the torch, if you will. Next letter, Tzadi. Tzadi has the numerical value of 90. Sarah was 90 years old when she bore Isaac. Chet has the numerical value of 8, which Isaac was circumcised on the 8th day. He was the first child to ever have been born and be circumcised on the 8th day. And of course, Kuf has the numerical value of 100, and Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. And just for fun, what does the name Yitzchak mean? It means he will laugh. Who will laugh? The righteous will laugh in the future when God restores order to this world and when vengeance will be repaid and justice served. Litzchok is to laugh. Who? Yitzchak in the future. Yeah, it's coming. Okay, how do we know about Ishmael? Next. Now, before we even get into Ishmael's name, if you recall the teachings on Abraham's 9th trial called Ishmael, that was the first one, and the second part was crescent moonfall. Did you understand that reference? I hope you did. If not, please write in the comment and I'll explain it, for goodness sakes. You will see that Ishmael did do tshuva after he returned to Abraham's house, specifically after the binding of Isaac. After the binding of Isaac. If you read in the book of Jasher over there, before the binding of Isaac, he was there at the house. They had this conversation. I'm better than you. No, you're not. Yes, I am, and so on and so forth. And then Isaac said, if God asked my father to sacrifice me, do it in a second. God's like, okay. That's basically how this thing got started, but we're going to be reading a little bit after that. Anyway, so you'll see Ishmael did do tshuva after he returned to Abraham's house, after the binding of Isaac, when Abraham died and was buried. And we see this in Genesis 25:9, where it says, Vaikeveru oto Yitzchak ve'Ishmael banav. And Isaac and Ishmael, his sons. They're both his sons, but Isaac first, Ishmael second, buried him in the cave of Machpelah. Okay? In other words, at this point, Ishmael is understanding, and he says, okay, clearly the promise, God gave me promises, God's going to take care of me, I am the son of Abraham after all, but the blessings of Abraham, that goes to Isaac, and he recognized that. So first it mentions Isaac and then Ishmael, meaning Ishmael submitted to Isaac, receiving the blessing and inheritance from Abraham, unlike earlier in their lives when Ishmael tried to kill Isaac. Here they are both called the sons of Abraham. Nevertheless, we cannot say the same for the seed of Ishmael, who have no part in the world to come, just like the seed of Esau. So, I'm not talking about the general seed of Ishmael or the general seed of Esau, Islam, Christianity. All the holy sparks need to remove from the seeds. But basically, spiritually speaking, they are not of Esau. They are not of Ishmael. They belong with Israel. Once all those are extracted, everybody else, bye-bye. Okay, so how do we know about Ishmael? Because it says in Genesis 16:11, Vayomer la malach Adonai, hinach hara vayoledet ben vekarat shmo Ishmael, ki shama Adonai el anyech. And the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you will conceive and bear a son, and you shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your affliction. What affliction? I'm going like way off. We're going to get a lot over here. What affliction are we talking about? Letitia, pay attention. This is for you. Letitia brought this up. In Bereshit Rabbah 45:5, it says that when Hagar first fled from Abraham, it was because she was pregnant with a child. However, Sarah gave her the evil eye, and as a result, she had a miscarriage. So she miscarried as a result, and so she fled, right? This is the affliction hinted in the text. It keeps saying affliction, but we're not really, what did she do exactly? This is what happened over here. So let's read some more from Genesis 16. All right? Verse 4. And he came to Hagar, and she conceived. This is Abraham. Came to Hagar, and she conceived, and she saw that she was pregnant. And her mistress became unimportant in her eyes. In other words, the moment that Hagar realized that she became pregnant, she started to look down upon Sarah, which you don't do that. Again, we went through all the teachings of Ishmael. God calls Hagar the shifcha, the handmaid. Sarah is the gvira. She's the lady of the house. Always. This is according to God and man. The moment you try and change that, which they're still trying to do, things happen. Okay. And her mistress, Sarah, became unimportant in her eyes. And Sarai said to Abram, may my injustice be upon you. In other words, how are you letting her treat me this way? I am your wife. I gave my handmaid into your bosom, and she saw that she had become pregnant, and I became unimportant in her eyes. You are now disrespecting me? May the Lord judge between me and you. Right? And Abram said to Sarai, here is your handmaid in your hand. Take her, do with her which is proper in your eyes. And Sarai afflicted her, and she fled from before her. Vata'anea Sarai la'anot is torture, basically, afflict. Anitem et nafshotechem, that means you will fast, you will afflict your nefesh, right? So it says she afflicted her, vativrach mipanea. She gave her the evil eye. She's like, come here, you. Come. You ever get that when you're a kid, you know? My mom's like, come here. Go get me a slipper or something so I can. I'm like, wait, so I have to now do this too? These things happen. It's okay. I got no problem with that. In fact, it should probably be incorporated again, because look at these youths today. And an angel of the Lord found her by the water fountain in the desert, by the fountain on the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's servant, we went through these verses, And he said, Hagar, Sarai's servant, where are you coming from and where are you going? And she said, from before Sarai, my mistress, I am fleeing. And the angel of the Lord said, return to your mistress. In other words, you are the handmaid, she is the mistress. Return to your mistress and allow yourself to be afflicted under her hands. In other words, you kind of have this coming, so this has to happen. But, and the angel of the Lord said to her, I will greatly multiply your seed, and it will not be counted for, abundance. In other words, it's too much to count, right? Now listen, she already had the miscarriage over here. And the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you will conceive. I thought she was, right? You see this from the text. Now that we point this out, you're like, oh, whoa. So she was pregnant and then she wasn't, and then she will conceive. You will conceive again. You can only conceive once per, pregnancy, if you will, meaning again, and bear a son, and you shall name him, here we go, Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your affliction. That is the affliction. Interesting, right? Thank you, Letitia. And our sages say, because Sarah afflicted Hagar, the children of Hagar will afflict the children of Sarah. Truth. That's exactly what happened. That is exactly what is still happening. And the affliction by Ishmael, our religion of peace cousins, will increase until the very end of days, when they will be wiped out from this world and from the next. Interestingly enough, I just want you guys to know, you're getting this on Wednesday, okay? That's when these teachings come out. I am recording this on Monday. Today is Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat started Sunday night. It goes until Monday night. So, Chag Sameach, Tu B'Shvat Sameach, and everything is a very, very, very high time. It opens things up, and this is when Israel starts getting favor. You guys heard what happened in Turkey and in Syria, right? That is the Ishmael of the Ishmael right now. Now, I'm not saying that any of these things are a good thing, but when it comes earthquakes, okay, so this is by the hand of God. No one sent rockets or anything yet. But this is what God did, okay? Specifically on this day. It's not meaningless. It has deep meaning. Another class. Okay. So furthermore, like we said, Sarah afflicted Hagar's kids. Hagar's kids are afflicting Sarah's kids. Furthermore, because of how Sarah treated Hagar, listen to this. Again, God pays perfect justice. She was taken 30 years before her time, as she was supposed to die after Abraham. She was supposed to live as long as Abraham lived, which is 175 years. But she died 38 years early. He was supposed to die at 175. She was supposed to die 10 years later. They were supposed to live the same amount of years. So why was she supposed to die after Abraham? Because God wanted to spare the tzaddik Abraham the pain of burying his wife, and yet free will. So although Hagar had it coming, whatever she had coming to her, even the afflictor, who should not have afflicted her in that manner, had 30 years of her life taken off. You see, and yet she died a complete tzadikah. Why? Because her time was served. You see, that this is how it works. Okay, so what does Ishmael mean? It means God will hear. Ishma, El. Ishma, to hear, El. God will hear. Okay, now this has two meanings. The first one we can see in Genesis 21:17. After Hagar and Ishmael were sent away by Abraham. Vaishma Elohim et kol hana'ar, and God heard the lad's voice, right? And the angel of God came to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is troubling you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the lad's voice in the place where he is. We went through all these verses. In other words, God heard his voice in the future from when his name was given, right? He says, when she ran away the first time before Ishmael was born, and you will conceive, his name is going to be Ishmael, because why? Ishmael. God heard his voice. And here we go, which was 28 years later, when Abraham sent them away, God actually heard his voice. That's the first meaning, right? The second, and let's continue with our text. And why was his name called Ishmael? All this I kind of packaged for you. And why was his name called Ishmael? Says Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, because the Holy One, blessed be he, the voice of the heard the voice of the affliction of his people, meaning Israel, from what Ishmael is going to do to them in the future. In other words, he's called Ishmael because of what he's doing. Ishmael, God will hear us because of him, which also makes perfect sense. And this language can also be seen in Exodus 2:24. Vaishma Elohim et na'akatam vayizkor Elohim et brito et Avraham et Yitzchak ve'et Yaakov. God heard their cry, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. Now, yes, I'm aware that the Egyptians are Ham and not Ishmael, but God does hear our cry. I need you to hear the language. And he will hear our cry while we are under the affliction of Ishmael. From what specifically? Go back to the crescent moonfall class. We discussed the 15 prophecies. It's towards the end of the class. The 15 prophecies that Ishmael has and will inflict upon Israel in the end of days. Many of them already happened. Few more still have to happen. And then, the rise of Ben David and everything. So one of the examples we mentioned was as the Judeans were being led to Babylon, as they passed through the lands of Ishmael, they gained a sliver of comfort and hope because technically we were supposed to be good, at peace with one another, right? But we weren't. So instead of water, in other words, we were fine with them. That's why we had this hope. Like, oh, okay, so we're walking through the lands of Ishmael. Great. They're our cousins. They are our brothers. Ishmael submitted to Isaac. Therefore, we can be saved. We can be comforted, right? So instead of water, what did? They filled their flasks and gave it to us, filled with hot air, to torture and kill us, while we were led by chains into captivity into Babylon. Now, you remember why? So Ishmael did this and they laughed while they were doing this. So you remember why God had it in for the Ammonites and the Moabites? Yes, right? Because it was Abraham who prayed for them to even exist. He prayed. And so Lot and his 2 daughters existed. They were saved completely from Sodom and Gomorrah. And they bore Ammon and Moab. So, why does God not accept any of the Ammonites or the Moabite men into Israel? Again, Ruth, very unique story over there. Because when they had a chance to but allow Israel to pass through their land, not asking for food or for water, only safe passage. Israel said, Lo yamina velo smola b'derech al melech nelech. We don't need your food. We don't need your water. We have food. We have water. We just want a safe passage. That's what we're asking. So not only did they deny them, which they didn't ask for. You're not going to get our food, or we're not going to give you food or water. Look, we didn't ask for it. We just want peace. We just want to pass by. No problem. What did they do? Not only did they say you're not getting food or water, but they went to war with them. They have no future, you see? And so with Ishmael, now look at this. This is why the seed of Ishmael has no future. Despicable. With Ishmael, dying of thirst in the desert, God opened a well for him and revived him. And what do they do to God's children? Give them the illusion of water, only to torture and kill them viciously and cruelly as they laugh and mock them. You see, God does not appreciate this kind of behavior. Nothing has changed. Judgment is coming. Now, we know what's going to happen to Ishmael, right? Okay. If we don't, please turn to Psalms 55. We will start with verse 14. Here is what's going to happen to Ishmael. This is David, Messiah ben David, writing of what will happen to Ishmael, just like we learned in the end of those classes. Verse 14, Ve'ata enosh ke'erki alufi umeyudai, and you are a man of my equal, my prince and my esteemed one, Ishmael, who was also a prince, son of Abraham, right? There were 2 princes. Remember that song? Anyway, okay. That together we would devise counsel in the house of God. We would walk with the multitude. Well, you built your house of idolatry on the house of God. May he incite death upon them. May they descend to the grave alive. For there are evils in their dwellings, in their midst. Ain't that the truth? Bekirbam. I shall call to God. Ani el Elohim ekra, v'Adonai yoshieni. I shall call to God, and the Lord will save me. Now listen. Erev v'boker v'tzaorayim asicha ve'ehema v'yishma koli. Evening, morning, and noontime, prayer time, I speak and moan, and he hearkened to my voice. He redeemed my beshalom nafshi. He redeemed my nefesh, my life, with peace from the battle that came upon me. We're talking about in the end of days here. This is Mashiach saying to God, because of the many people who were with me. Okay? So this is Messiah ben David. Listen to the end of those classes. The 15 prophecies, we go into Messiah ben David, what's coming out from there. Messiah ben David speaking of the end of days when he wipes out Ishmael. Listen now. Ishmael, vaya'anem, vayeshev kodem sela, asher ein chalifot lamo velo yaru Elohim. Ishmael, may God hear us and answer them, and the one who dwells from time immemorial forever, for there is no passing for them, and they did not fear God. How can you treat the Jews this way? Literally the Jews, the Judeans. That's how we are Jews today. We are the only known remnant, right? How can you do this to God's children? Be so cruel. When God gave you order to save your life, you did the opposite for them? They did not fear God. This is spitting in the face of God. Shalach yadav bishlamav chilel brito. He, Ishmael, stretched forth his hand against him, who was at peace with him, Israel. We were not at war with Ishmael. Why are you doing this? He profaned his covenant. We were at peace with them. There was no reason for that cruelty. Smooth were the buttery words of his mouth. Hey, cuz, you thirsty? You seem thirsty. Here, have some water. But his heart was set on war. Psych! Did we say water? We meant hot air. Allah Akbar, and all that good stuff. His words were softer than oil, but they are curses. Another thing you should know, in the Quran, the book of peace, lie, cheat, steal, murder, do whatever you need to do to get your agenda across. Cast your burden on the Lord, and he will bear you. He shall never allow a righteous man to falter. But you, O God, shall lower them to the pit of destruction. Men of blood and deceit, exactly, shall not live half their days, but I will trust in you. The number of that psalm again? Yeah, where is it? Psalms 55. We started from verse 14 to the end. But yep, this is what's going to happen to Ishmael. This speaks about the covenant that they broke and what they did and how they treated us. Ishmael, right in there, no problem. So you see, Ishmael is the final exile within the exile of Esav, of Edom. So within the end of that, there's still going to be a fifth one, like 4.5, Galut Ishmael. So again, back to our original question. How could Ishmael personally be on this list of superstars? Because Ishmael actually died a righteous man. Although he started out as a murdering, thieving, rapist, he did full tshuva that was accepted by God. And as a result, he, and he alone, not his seed, will receive his just reward. Okay. And as we read a few classes ago in Ecclesiastes 7:1, a good name is better than good oil, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. In other words, when you're born, you have no zchuyot. You have nothing. There's no merit to your name. What have you done? I'm born, I'm alive, I'm eating and I'm sleeping and I'm, in my diapers. That's it. So that's it. When you die, you already have merits that you can show before God. I did this, I did this, I did that. God didn't just bring us here to this world so we could float by and raise our hands and say, I believe. That's not how this works. We got work to do. We're reading it, right? We're all reading the same book. So some people say, oh, we don't have work to do. The work's already been done. No problem. This is where they end up. Okay. So you can always turn your life around, no matter where you're at. Okay. You can always turn your life around. You could be the most evil, vile, wicked person, and you can die a tzaddik, because that's really what counts. How many years do we have here? 120, right? We say, even though who lives to 120 these days, but Moses, the most perfect of all men that has ever lived, 120 years, as we're going to get to in a moment. And yet still, how can you weigh that against eternity? It's not, and they understood this. As I'm going through, you know what? I'll finish this and we'll have a chat afterwards. Anyway, because all these teachings, they're bringing things out in me. It's giving me this understanding of the kind of understanding that they had. And as a result of the understanding that they had, they ran to do the mitzvot. They ran to do it. They couldn't wait. Abraham was searching for God his entire life, right? Since he was a child, and he never stopped. He was thrown into the fire when he was 50. God never spoke to him. What kind of faith is this? You understand? It's something different. Okay, so anyway. So every piece of Torah that has been learned, discussed, taught, extrapolated upon, anything and everything, this is all in the merit of who? Moshe Rabbeinu. This is why Moshe Rabbeinu has a different title than all the other rabbis. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, Rav Luria. All these rabbis are Rav a rabbi, right? So Rav if they're in Bavel, Rabbi if they're in Israel. So why are they called Rav and then their name? And Moses is the only one is not called Rav Moshe. He's called Moshe Rabbeinu. What is Rabbeinu? He is our current rabbi. Like we said, because every piece of Torah to have ever been taught or learned or extrapolated upon, everything, this today, Moses received back then. And it is in his merit that we are doing this right now. That's why he is our current rabbi, Moshe Rabbeinu. How do we know about Moses, Moshe? Because it says in Genesis 6:3. Okay, obviously, if you don't have the Hebrew, you're going to miss this. Yes, I said Genesis 6:3. Go. If you don't have the Hebrew, you'll miss this, because even if you do have the Hebrew, but you don't know what you're looking for, you're also going to miss it. So here, if you didn't know, here we go. Genesis 6:3. I'm going to read this in English. And the Lord said, let my spirit not quarrel forever concerning man, because he is also flesh, and his days shall be 120 years. Do we hear Moses there? No. Let's read the Hebrew. ויאמר אדוני לא ידון רוחי באדם לעולם בשגם הוא בשר והיו ימיו 120 שנה. Do we hear Moses there? No, we did not. Okay. Are you ready for some hidden code? The word beshagam, listen, Vayomer Adonai, and the Lord said, Lo yadun ruchi ba'adam, my spirit shall not quarrel forever concerning man. Beshagam hu basar, because he is also flesh. What is beshagam? It has no meaning that we know of, so they translate it in English to fill the sentence. Beshagam, he is flesh, and his days will be V'hayu yamav 120 shana, 120 years. Beshagam is the same numerical value as Moshe. Moses lived 120 years. And the spirit of God that will not quarrel with man. In other words, the spirit of God that gets along very, very well with Moses we can see God giving him even an increase in Numbers 11:17. And I will come down and I will speak with you there, and I will increase the spirit that is upon you and bestow it upon them. Then they will bear the burden of the people with you so that you need not bear it alone. וירדתי ודיברתי עמך שם ועצלתי מן הרוח אשר עליך ושמתי עליהם. Moses was chosen to be the conduit already back in Genesis, as he is the vessel by which Israel received the Spirit. God could have given it to everyone, but he gave it to Moses to overflow. You remember back in the day, we used to do some Parshas teachings, right? Remember the example that I gave with the champagne tower? Specifically for I think that Parsha over there? You put all the champagne glasses, and if you want to fill them all up, you're not going to fill up one glass at a time, right? You're going to pour straight into the first glass, and it's just going to overflow from there and fall down and fall down and fall down. So that is that. Or even a better example. I don't know if everybody knows this. They have this little contraption for if you make Kiddush. You have the wine cup, and it looks like a little silver merry-go-round. That's really what it looks like. You have these little mini shot glasses all around it underneath, and there's a hole over there. So you drink the wine and you pour it right in the middle, and it funnels through and it goes into each one of distributing it equally in all the little shot glasses, and then you hand those out to your guests. Okay? That would be a better thing, because in other words, it all directly comes from Moses. One stop directly from Moses to whoever it needs to go to, not necessarily from the first layer of glasses to the second and third and so on. You got the idea. Okay, just so you understand this. So that's exactly what God said. I will increase your spirit, and then it's going to go on to them. Okay, so essentially what God is saying to the world that has fallen into complete chaos and disarray back in the day, Genesis 6, right? Is that it needs rules. They're living how they want, when they want, with who they want. It's just, this is what's going on over there. So what does the world need? It needs commands, judgments, and statutes by which we can correct the world and not destroy it. And it was Moses who was chosen to bring God's Torah, the law, to the world. This is different than the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, the 7 Noahide laws. Noach was given these laws, but these laws were not enough to correct the world. These laws were enough to keep the world going. The Torah and the mitzvot within the Torah, they actually have the power to do the correction. But guess what? The 7 Noahide laws are all part of the Torah. It's derech eretz, your basic be a mensch type of laws. My spirit will not quarrel with man, not with this man, but rather he is in such a clean, perfect vessel, his body, because when Moses died, we read over there from Parshat Vezot HaBracha, I did 2 teachings on this. Moshe's neshama did not want to leave him. He says, I'm good right here. But he perfected his body, right? But rather he is such a clean and perfect vessel that I will give him an increase, so that it may overflow to others around him, and his days shall be 120 years. Moshe Rabbeinu. Oh, and by the way, did you know that Moses had 10 names? This is, we're talking about names here. Moses had 10 names. This is in Vaikra Rabbah. I forgot to prepare water. So, excuse me. 10 shemot nikra'u lo leMoshe. 10 names Moses was called by. Yered, Chever, Yekutiel, Avigdor, Avisuko, Avizanoach, Tuvia, Shma'aya, Levi, uMoshe. Okay? 10 names. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu leMoshe, Chayecha, Mikol shemot shenikra lecha, eini koreh otcha ela beshem shekaratcha Batya bat Paro. The Lord said to Moses, by your life, from all the names that you have been given, both in heaven and on earth, I am calling you by the name that Batya, the daughter of Pharaoh, has given you. Why out of all the names of Moses that were given to him by man and God was he named Moshe? Because God called Pharaoh's daughter. who was a leper from her father's house, who decided to remove herself from her upbringing as her heart went out to Israel. On the day that she went to dunk herself in the Nile for a mikveh, that is the last thing you do before your conversion is complete, meaning you have to have zero idolatry in your life, in your heart, in your gone, nothing. You have to walk that Israel walks. You have to feel their pain because now their pain becomes your pain, right? Read Ruth. Meaning she no longer followed idols, but the God of Israel. And as a result, she dunked. And when she emerged, her leprosy was gone. And what did she see? A basket floating on the river, and a Hebrew child was in it. Vatashiteu vatashet, and she stretched out her arm. Now that she was clean, she could touch this holy child. She mamash became his adoptive mother. And so, since she removed herself from her father's house, and she took in the future savior of Israel, God said, you're no longer Pharaoh's daughter. You are my daughter, Batya. Bat, the daughter of Yah. You see this. And Batya was so righteous. We're talking about the princess of Egypt, essentially. She was so righteous that she was one of the 10 people to enter Gan Eden alive, meaning she never tasted death. God, you say, favors Israel. God chose Israel because Israel chose God. But God loves all of his creation, and the doors are open for whoever wants to enter except those that did despicable things which cannot enter. Okay. So although a leper is considered dead, maybe she was cured, so she already had the death, you see, but in any case, never underestimate the power of tshuva. It's never too late. Now, next, how do we know about Solomon? As said in 1 Chronicles 22:9, this is God speaking to David. Hine ben nolad lach, hu ye ish menucha, v'hanichoti lo mikol oivav misaviv, ki shlomo yihye shmo, v'shalom, v'sheket eten al Yisrael beyamav. Behold, a son will be born to you, said God to David. He will be a man of peace, rest. Menucha, lanuach, noach, rest. So it doesn't say peace, but it alludes to it. That's how it's translated. Anyway, he shall be a man of rest, literally translated, and I shall give him peace from all his enemies around about. For Solomon will be his name. Shlomo HaMelech Shashalom Lo will be his name. And I shall give peace and quiet to Israel in his days. So again, HaMelech Shlomo means HaMelech Shehashalom Lo. When we read Shir HaShirim, and we read Solomon's name, Shlomo, right? In there, Solomon is not referring to himself. He's referring to God, the king who gives peace. HaMelech Shehashalom Lo, the king who has peace, who gives peace, who bestows peace. He's speaking of God. Okay? Okay, so that peace is with him. He was given the name because he was chosen to build the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, okay, aka the house of peace. That's one of its names. So listen to this from the beginning of the chapter, okay? And David said, this is the house of the Lord God, and this is the altar for burnt offerings for Israel. And David ordered to gather the strangers, the V'omer David liknos et hagerim, meaning the ger toshav. If there were gerei tzedek, then they wouldn't be gerim anymore. They would just be Israel. All the ger toshavs, in other words, all the Noahides that were living within the realm of Israel, because you can't have any idolaters over there. You understand this, right? All the gerim, asher be'eretz Yisrael, all the strangers, it says, who were in the land of Israel, and he stationed hewers to hew wrought stone to build the house of God. Who built the first temple? Noahides. Don't ever forget that. And David prepared iron in abundance for nails, for the doors of the gates, and for the couplings, and copper in abundance without weight. In other words, you can't measure it. And cedar trees without number. For the Zidonians, Hatzidonim, from Sidon, and the Tyrians, from Tyre, brought cedar trees in abundance to David. All the nations around had a hand in this. This is why they were blessed. The moment that the temple's built, everybody is blessed. And David said, Solomon, my son, is young and tender, and the house to be built for the Lord must be magnified on high for fame and for glory to all lands. To all lands. I shall therefore now make preparation for him. And David prepared in abundance before his death. God said he couldn't do it, but God didn't say he can't prepare it for Solomon, right? Think of a dad who's about to go and he gives his son an incredible Lego set. It's got all the pieces you need and all the instructions. Just follow the instructions. Everything should be there. That's really essentially what it was. And he called Solomon his son, and commanded him to build a house for the Lord God of Israel. And David said to Solomon, my son, as for me, it was in my heart to build a house in the name of the Lord my God. But the word of the Lord was upon me, saying, you have shed much blood, and you have waged great wars, and you shall not build a house in my name, because you have shed much blood to the ground before me. All these things were necessary. That's why when David comes back, he is not necessarily the warring Messiah. That's Ben Yosef. He is the one of peace, because he is the one that is going to build and lasot chanukat habayit for Beit HaMikdash. He's coming back and doing what he could not do before. Behold, a son will be born to you. He will be a man of peace, and I shall give him peace from all his enemies, right? All his enemies round about. For Solomon will be his name, and I shall give peace and quiet to Israel in his days. He shall build a house in my name, and he shall be to me a son, and I to him as a father, and I shall prepare a throne of his kingdom forever. Solomon was the literal Messiah, son of David, as God promised David in verse 9 that we just read. Veshalom vasheket eten al Yisrael beyamav. This is very telling. And I shall give peace and quiet to Israel in his days, meaning as long as the son of David reigns. You see? So of course. So when Mashiach ben David finally comes, the same will happen. And this quiet and peace will indeed last all of his days, which will never end until the clock runs out, of course. And then the rules change completely. Okay. Josiah, Yoshiyahu, from where do we know about him? As said in 1 Kings 13:2. By the way, are you guys, I'm just curious. No one's going to answer me now, but you guys have like notes and stuff so you know where these verses are? Because this is good stuff. Just, anyway, think about it. Okay, so 1 Kings 13:2. And he called, they put in brackets here in prophecy, I don't know why, about the altar and the command of the Lord. And he said, altar, altar, so said the Lord, behold, a son will be born to the house of David. Josiah will be his name, Yoshiyahu Shmo. And upon you he will slaughter all the priests of the high places who offer sacrifices to you, and human bones will they burn upon you. Josiah was one of the good kings of Judah. He began his reign when he was only 8 years old, and unfortunately he was murdered at the young age of 39. He cleaned house, pretty much saved the line of Judah. He abolished idolatry. He brought everybody back to where it was, to where they were supposed to be. Like I said, pretty much saving the line of Judah. I mean, obviously the line of Judah will last forever, but God put him there. He says, listen, Josiah's coming there. He's going to clean house. So God already named him. So because he was so righteous and a king, he could also redeem much of the sad state of his people. Why was his name Yashiyahu? What does it mean? Because he was accepted as a shai upon the altar. The word shai in Hebrew doesn't mean, I'm so shy, don't look at me. That's not what shai means. Shai means a gift of sorts. Matana, shai. When sometimes you go to stores around, let's say, I don't know, okay, Tu B'Shvat time. You go to like gift stores or something, or fruit stores, and they'll give you some like wrapped up dates. Here, shai lachag. Shai, matana, a gift for the chag. So that's what shai means. But in this specific context, it means a gift and sacrificial offering. Matana vekorban. Now, there's a reason that God is naming all these specific individuals, because that tells us who they are and what they're going to do. So King Yashiyahu was accepted as a gift to God. God said, I'm naming him this because guess what's going to happen? It's going to be sad, but it's very good, right? Tzaddik. Yashiyahu lefanecha. May he be a worthy gift or offering before you. That is what God named this kid. And so he was. King Mashiach. Okay, yeah, that's it. We're done with him. Okay, good stuff. Anyway, and you could read about his life over there. It is very sad, but he did do a lot. He did a lot of good. I think who killed him? The king of Egypt, if I'm not mistaken. Was it Paro Necho? I think so. Anyway, King Mashiach. How do we know about him? From Psalms 72:17. Vayhi shmo leolam lifnei shemesh inon shmo. Veitbaruchu bo kol goim yashrehu. May his name be forever, Yehi shmo, and his name will be forever. Before the sun, his name will be, this translates as magnified, and people will bless themselves with him. All nations will praise him. This is not the best translation, obviously, but the Hebrew says his name is Inon. Inon Shmo. His name is Inon. Very, very, you can't confuse this. And why is his name Inon? Shehu atid linen yeshanei afar. For he will awaken or arouse those who slumber in the dust, i.e., the dead. Our sages say that the name Yinon comes from the word nin, which in the holy tongue, nin, what is nin? Nin in modern day Hebrew means great grandkid, like ninim veninot. That's the fourth. Yeah, the fourth generation, so the great grandkids. But in Lashon HaKodesh specifically, it says, what does it mean? It means boy. Yeled, na'ar, youth. Which reminds me of Isaiah 11, which again, I'm going off script here, which I believe we covered, because I think we did cover, but let's quickly go through it, a few relevant verses from the beginning. And a shoot shall spring forth from the stem of Jesse, and a twig shall sprout from its roots. This shows us that whoever will be the Messiah will come from the lowest places, i.e. the ground. People are like, no. The shoot comes from the ground. It's from the bottom upward. That's how this happens too. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. A spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and heroism, a spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord. He is not born with the Spirit, but receives it when the time is right. This happened, same thing with Moses. Moses only got hit when he was 80. Boom. You're the Redeemer. What? And then all of a sudden Moses was elevated to the 50 levels of Binah. Boom, just like that. And he shall smell the fear of the Lord, and neither with the sight of his eyes shall he judge, nor with the hearing of his ears shall he chastise. Our eyes and ears have deceived us since day one. Obviously, the sense of smell was the only uncorrupted sense in the Garden of Eden. But still, till this day, our eyes and our ears deceive us. But you can never think about this. You can never pass a steaming pile of manure as the smell of roses, right? You can't mask that. It is what it is, and you smell it. And he shall judge the poor justly, and he shall chastise with equity the humble of the earth, and he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall put the wicked to death. Boom. Words. That's what's going to happen. Thus far, Moses was the only one who was able to do this, and not even before he came into his full self at 80, when he was 20 years old. I'll give you a very interesting thing over here, where it says, Vaifen ko vako. He looked this way and that way before he killed the Egyptian. He spoke God's name. Ko, kafe, 25, ko, 25. Moses already understood the levels of Binah, which is why he uttered God's name and dropped the Egyptian like that. Why? Because he was saving his brother. You see. Anyway, and righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faith the girdle of his loins. Our loins, this is where the covenant lies. We said, what is around Elijah's loins? It's the ram of Isaac. When we keep the covenant, though, like Yosef, like Noach, we too are called tzaddikim. V'hayat tzedek. Righteousness is justice, is zol motnav. V'emunah is zol chalatzav. And a wolf shall live with the lamb, and a leopard shall lie with the kid, and a calf and lion cub and a fatling shall lie together, and a small child shall lead them, right? V'na'al katan noheg bam. So nin is na'al. All this happens in order that they are, all this happens in the order that, first this happens. It's not like 1, 2, 3, 4. He's firstborn. He doesn't know who he is. He comes from the bottom. All of a sudden one day he gets zapped. Then he slowly but surely starts to understand who he is and what he needs to do. And then he starts doing it, right? Okay. So these things come in stages, just like every single thing in the Torah from the first days of creation. Everything has an order. Beginning with the climb out of the filth of the earth to the endowment of the spirit, to the correction of man, to the return to Eden. And a small child shall lead them, and so his name is Inon, as it says in the Psalms. And where does Rabbi Eliezer get this from? Again, this is not in there. Masechet Sanhedrin, you could look this up. Masechet Sanhedrin 98b, along with other names the sages give Messiah. So what is the Messiah's name? Let's go to Masechet Sanhedrin 98b. The school of Rabbi Shelah says, Shiloh Shmo. Shiloh is his name, as it is stated in Genesis 49:10. This is when Jacob was blessing Judah before his death, obviously alluding to Messiah ben David from the line of Judah. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. And Judah, that's it. Nor the student of the law from between his feet until Shiloh comes, ad ki yavo Shiloh, and to him will be a gathering of all the peoples. Okay? And just a fun fact, again, can't make this stuff up, Shiloh also has the numerical value of Moses. So until Moses comes, who knows? Let's see. The school of Rabbi Yanai says, Inon is his name, as said in Psalm 72:17. Yehi shmo le'olam lifnei shemesh Inon shemo v'yitbachu bo kol goyim yashu. We just went through this. The school of Rabbi Hanina says, Hanina, right? Like the school of Rabbi Tamir says, I'm not a rabbi, I'm just for fun, yes? Please, let's be clear with that. Yeah, Mashiach's name is Tamir. It's funny, but Rabbi Hanina was a big dude. Anyway, the school of Rabbi Hanina says, Hanina is his name, as stated in Jeremiah 16:13. What is this? And I will cast you off this land. This is when you don't do what you need to do. And I will cast you off of this land that you and your fathers did not know, and you shall serve their other gods day and night, for I will show you no favor. We don't get that from the English. Vavadetem sham et ha'elohim acharim. This is Israel being cast off, right? And you will go, this is the 10 lost tribes. You will go there and you will worship gods over there that your forefathers never worshipped. Yomam valala, day and night, asher lo eten lachem chanina. Now, chanina, what is chanina? In modern day Hebrew, it means to pardon, right? A presidential pardon, chanina. That's what that means. It also comes from the root word of that is chanun. Chanina, Chanun, which means compassionate, merciful, gracious. This is how we begin the 13 principles of mercy. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun. Lord God, merciful and compassionate. And some say that Menachem ben Chizkiah is his name. In other words, Menachem, as stated in Lamentations 1:6, Ve'al ele ani bochia, eini yoda maim, ki rachak mimeni Menachem, meshiv nafshi, hayu banai shomemim ki gava oyev. For these things I weep, my eye sheds tears for the Comforter, Menachem, comforter, to restore my soul is removed from me. My children are desolate, for the enemy has prevailed. This is Jerusalem's cry, by the way. Menachem means comforter. You also have the name Noach in between the open and closed mem. Noach is nun chet. Menachem is mem, nun chet, and then mem, open and closed. And mem stands for Moshe. It also stands for Mashiach. So when the late, great Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, hey group, here you go, Menachem Mendel Schneerson was doing his thing, unfortunately, you have many who still believe that he is currently Mashiach, right? Because look, his name is Menachem, and he's a great tzaddik. All true, but he doesn't even come close to the spectrum of a potential Messiah. Again, not to take away from the greatness of this man, chas v'shalom, okay? But of course he was not Mashiach. You could read in Rambam Hilchot Melachim. I went through it in the Red series, okay? We discussed this in the Red series in great detail. Who could be considered even in the spectrum of the potential Messiah, and of course, who is absolutely not on any spectrum. Okay, so what is Messiah's name? Is it Shiloh, Inon, Chanina, Menachem? God called Cyrus his Messiah, as well as David, right? The answer is simple. It's all of the above. I mean, not including Cyrus, of course. Mashiach means anointed one. Yes? Okay. So in other words, God put his finger on Cyrus, and Cyrus says, get back to Israel, build the temple. So these are the characteristics of Messiah, a hint towards the giver of the law, Moses in Shiloh. He will arouse those who slumber in the dust. He will be gracious and a comforter for Israel after thousands of years of exile. But as we read in Isaiah, he is bringing judgment with him, as well as he will strike down those who oppose God and his law by the utterance of a word. And so, these are the 6 who were called by name before they were born. That's our class for today. Stick around for next week. We continue chapter 22. I hope you enjoyed this. Have a wonderful rest of the week. I hope you had a Chag Sameach, and have a Shabbat Shalom. This coming Shabbat, Parashat Yitro, 10 Commandments. Yeah, okay. Anyway, you take care. Bye-bye.